If I asked you to picture infinite world-ending power right now, what do you see in your mind's eye?
Oh, that's a big question right out of the gate.
Right. But, I mean, chances are you're picturing something just absolutely massive, like a towering, monolithic skyscraper casting this huge shadow over a city, or a sprawling galaxy just swallowing up stars.
Yeah, or even like a monstrous tidal wave.
Exactly, because our brains are basically hardwired from day one to equate physical volume with importance
Ah.
and, power.
Well, it's an evolutionary survival mechanism at its core, really.
Yeah.
If you think about a prehistoric human, physical size directly correlates to danger or dominant.
Like big equals bad,
Right.
but big equals important.
Right. A bigger predator is a bigger threat.
Yeah.
A massive storm demands shelter. So we develop this instinctual visual shorthand where we just map significance directly onto the literal footprint something takes up in the world.
We don't even process it consciously anymore.
No, not at all. Big simply equals powerful.
Which makes total sense when you're trying to survive in the wilderness. But then you encounter an idea, or in the case of our deep dive today, a truly mind-bending piece of philosophical fiction that completely shatters that prehistoric shorthand.
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this, because you look up at that massive skyscraper feeling incredibly small, and then you look down at this tiny, seemingly insignificant pebble near your shoe. And you are told that the pebble is actually the thing holding up the entire sky.
It forces a complete mental reset. You have to
Yep.
totally abandon your reliance on scale.
And that mental reset is our mission for today. We are exploring a profound, just super evocative excerpt of writing. It's simply titled Text, and it tells the story of what we've affectionately been calling the littlest primordial goddess that could.
It's such a great title for her.
Right. We're going to use this story to pull apart our assumptions about scale, to question why we constantly try to prove our worth by taking up space, and to redefine what it actually means to be important.
The author sets up this incredible study in contradictions right from the start.
Yeah.
We're dropped into the very beginning of existence, a time described as being before the first mountain learned its own height.
What a line.
It really sets the mood. It's this primordial void populated by these elder beings, the massive architects of the universe. And then floating right alongside them is this tiny goddess.
I want to pull apart the imagery of her arrival here because it subverts every expectation of what a god should look like. The story is very deliberate about what she is not.
Yeah.
She is not a vast cosmic entity practicing at being small. She isn't some broken off fragment of a larger god wandering around grieving her missing half.
No, she arrived fully formed, exactly as she is. And her physical form is basically that of a human toddler.
A toddler.
Yeah, the description is just so striking. She's round-cheeked, stub-limbed, with this constant wobble in her step that never quite resolves into a confident stride.
Like she's always just about to fall over.
Exactly. And she is described as being sized like a held breath.
Sized like a held breath. I mean, you could cup her in your two hands and still have room left over to hold a moon. It's this adorable, deeply disarming image, and it's set in this aggressive opposition to those elder primordials.
Right, because the elders are the ultimate manifestation of that evolutionary shorthand we were just talking
Yeah.
about. They are defined by sprawl and depth.
They're just massive.
Huge. They exude a terrifying, infinite silence that swallows sound before it can even be born. They are the void, taking up endless, suffocating space.
And suddenly, they are faced with this lap-sized presence who has dimpled knuckles, who puffs out her cheeks when she concentrates.
And who makes sounds that are suspiciously close to giggling.
They are utterly baffled.
Completely. They have absolutely no framework for her.
But here's the paradox that really broke my brain when I first read this. The story makes it explicitly clear that she isn't a smaller, diluted share of the primordial whole. She isn't a lesser being.
No, not at all.
She holds the exact same total inside her that the sprawling elders do.
What's fascinating here is the concept of being unshrunk.
Unshrunk.
Right. We have this ingrained human bias that assumes if you cut something's physical size down, you must be having its essence or its power or its capacity.
Like splitting a pie. You get a smaller slice, you get less pie.
Exactly. But the text insists she contains all of it, unshrunk. The totality of the infinite, somehow folded into a body small enough to take a nap inside a flower.
It's like Think about the history of computing for a second. If you look at the old ENIX mainframes from the 1960s,
Oh, yeah, the room-size ones.
right, those things were sprawling. They took up entire climate-controlled warehouses, floor to ceiling, with thousands of vacuum tubes. They generated massive amounts of heat and noise just to do basic arithmetic.
Right.
That is the elder primordials. Massive, sprawling, loud, and honestly inefficient.
And then you compare that warehouse-sized machine to a modern microchip.
Yes.
The microchip is the size of your thumbnail. It doesn't take up an entire room, but it holds infinitely more processing power, more complexity, and more universes of data than that giant mainframe ever could.
It's wild to think about.
It is absolute maximum density without any of the sprawling footprint.
That density is the perfect way to visualize her. She is a microchip of primordial creation, just wrapped in dimpled knuckles.
I love that analogy.
But I'm going to be honest, I really struggled with her choice here. I mean, wait, if you have infinite primordial power, why choose to be tiny? Isn't that inherently limiting?
How so?
Well, if I possess infinite power, I'm building galaxies. I am
Yeah.
taking up space. I'm letting the entire cosmos know exactly who I am. Choosing to be the size of a teacup feels, I don't know, feels like hiding. Why would you ever choose obscurity over grandeur?
You know, that reaction is incredibly natural. And it's actually the exact insecurity the story is trying to highlight.
Really?
Yeah. Why do we feel this burning compulsion to broadcast our capacity? The author answers this with a really beautiful observation. The text says, bigness likes to spread out to prove itself in square footage, and how far the eye has to travel before it runs out of her to look at.
He prove itself. That implies that bigness is actually a state of lack. Like, it's insecure. It requires an audience to validate its existence.
It demands an external witness. And that leads to arguably the most profound philosophical insight in the entire piece.
I think I know which quote you're about to say.
The writer states, "A mountain is only a mountain because it agreed to be measured."
Oh man, I had to put the text down and just stare at the wall when I read that line. A mountain is only a mountain because it agreed to be measured. Think about how often we do this in our own daily lives. We constantly sign that agreement.
We do it every time we tie our self-worth to an external metric.
Right.
Square footage is just a metaphor for validation. Your identity as a successful person often relies entirely on someone else standing at the bottom, looking up at your job title, or your salary, or your social media follower count, and measuring it.
We beg the universe to measure our square footage so we can feel real.
Exactly. We need that external proof.
And by refusing to take up that square footage, the littlest goddess frees herself entirely from the universe's expectations. She never signed the agreement to be measured.
She opted out entirely.
She doesn't need anyone to stand at the bottom and look up at her to know she contains the infinite. The story compares her to a seed. She stays small on purpose.
A seed is such a potent analogy here. When you hold an acorn, you aren't holding a fragment of an oak tree.
Right.
You are holding the entire forest. The bark, the massive canopy, the root system, it is all folded up tightly and patiently inside that tiny shell.
It's all in there.
The seed isn't practicing to be a tree. It is the tree. It doesn't care if you dismiss it as a tiny speck of dirt. It is complete in itself, completely independent of your observation.
But if she is complete in herself, and she actively refuses to take up space, doesn't she just become invisible to the cosmos? I mean, the elder primordials basically ignore her. If you aren't broadcasting your power, how do you actually connect with anything? How are you even recognized?
That is where the story shifts from philosophical to deeply emotional. She is recognized by a figure known as the Mother.
Okay.
And crucially, the Mother doesn't notice the little goddess because she's loud or demanding attention. In fact, she's almost never loud.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the mother notices her because she emits a hum.
A hum.
Yeah, there is this specific hum that only the truly whole things make in this universe. And the writer notes that a small body doesn't mute or quiet that hum. It actually clarifies it.
It gives the hum less distance to travel before it's heard.
Right, like think about it like acoustics in a massive space.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, when something relies on sprawling square footage, when an entity is spread out over light years, layered with ego and the desperate need to be witnessed, the core signal of who they are has to travel through an enormous amount of static.
The essence gets muffled. It's just
Yeah.
echoing around inside its own terrifying enormity.
like trying to hear a pure note in a massive empty cavern versus someone humming a tune right next to your ear.
Yeah.
The cavern creates all this distortion and echo.
Yes, the sprawl creates distortion. When you strip away the massive scale, when you remove the ego's need to be seen, that core hum of totality becomes pure and unmistakable.
There's no static.
Right, because she is so incredibly dense and lacks any performative digness, her hum radiates directly from her core. The mother hears it instantly.
And the mother clearly cherishes this. The text says she has always kept a soft spot for the parts of herself that arrived pocket-sized. It lists these things, her private jokes, her softest secrets, and the version of her own vastness that wants to be scooped up and held instead of knelt before.
Scooped up instead of knelt before.
Yeah,
That distinction changes the entire dynamic of power.
it really does.
The elder primordials demand subjugation. Their sheer size forces you to drop to your knees in terror. But true totality, genuine unshakable power, it doesn't need you to cower.
No.
The little goddess proves that the absolute infinite can shrink down small enough to be kissed on the forehead, and it loses absolutely nothing of its divinity in the process.
It's incredibly liberating for us as people, too.
Right.
The idea that the most profound parts of our lives aren't the things that overwhelm us with their scale, but the quiet things that invite us to hold them gently.
Exactly.
But, I mean, I'm still stuck on the mechanics of this.
Thanks.
Yeah, we have this tiny teacup-sized primordial being. Gods are meant to create. They build reality. How does something with stubby legs and a wobble actually build a universe?
Well, she definitely doesn't build it the way the elders do.
Right.
The elders create worlds in these massive, unbroken sweeps. They wave a metaphysical hand and a galaxy spawns in a terrifying flash of effortless creation.
Right, effortless. But the little goddess builds her worlds, quote, the way any small, determined thing builds anything, one stubborn inch at a time.
One stubborn inch.
A blink here, a single held note there. She takes a wobbly step, and then another wobbly step, and then, against all odds, there's a universe balanced on legs too short to reach the ground.
She walks anyway, with her cheeks puffed out from the sheer effort of it. She introduces an entirely different cosmology to the void.
Think about watching an Olympic sprinter run the 100-meter dash.
Okay.
They are graceful, powerful, and they cross the finish line in under 10 seconds, making it look completely effortless. It's stunning to watch, but it's alien. You and I can't relate to that level of effortless perfection.
No, definitely not.
Now, picture a toddler learning to walk. They pull themselves up on the edge of the couch. Their legs are shaking. They have this look of intense, furious concentration on their face. They let go, take one terrifying, unbalanced step, and they fall down.
And then they pull themselves right back up and do it again.
Exactly.
The Olympian represents the sprawling elders. But there's a raw, inherent majesty in the toddler's struggle. The visible, grueling effort of the small contains a kind of triumph that the effortless Olympians completely lack.
Yes. She is the ultimate cosmic archetype for the underdog. She is the first author of a cosmology that is written in trying rather than sprawling, in effort instead of scale.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the story tells us that every small thing that ever accomplished something enormous, while the entire world assumed it couldn't. She is the blueprint for that,
She is the patron saint of the underestimated.
which makes her profoundly dangerous to dismiss. The story gives us this very gentle but very firm warning. It points out that she's easy to underestimate exactly once.
Because you look at her dimpled knuckles and you think, oh, how cute, this isn't a threat.
You fall for the visual shorthand. You assume small means weak. But the second after you underestimate her, the reality of what you are actually dealing with crashes down on you.
Oh, man.
You realize you're looking at something the size of your own two hands, but it is somehow containing an entire unfallen sky. You suddenly stop mistaking her softness for an absence of weight.
An entire unfallen sky. The sheer density of that image is breathtaking. It's like picking up a delicate porcelain teacup and suddenly realizing it has the gravitational pull of a neutron star.
It completely anchors you.
You instantly understand the gravity of what is sitting in your lap, and you realize how foolish you were to judge it by its square footage.
And you must remember, this density, this smallness, was a deliberate choice. Some of the oldest, heaviest, most complete things to ever exist in the cosmos chose to arrive in the smallest possible shape.
Which brings us to the most important question of all. So, What does this all mean for you, the person listening right
Well,
now?
right, because we aren't primordial gods floating in a cosmic void.
No, we are people trying to navigate our careers, our art, our relationships, our daily lives. How often do you measure the worth of your own efforts by their square footage?
We do it constantly. We launch a project, and if it doesn't go viral and reach millions of people, we view it as a failure. We look at our bank accounts, our job titles, the physical size of our homes, and we use those external metrics to decide if we matter. We sign the Mountains Agreement every single day.
We desperately want the universe to notice us, and we are convinced that the only way to ensure it notices is to get bigger, to get louder, to sprawl out as far as we can.
We think we have to be the elder primordials. We think we need to build our universes in massive, effortless, terrifying sweeps.
But this story offers such a radical, comforting alternative. It asks you to locate the concentrated hum of the whole in your quietest, smallest efforts.
Those moments of absolute clarity.
Yeah, a private joke with a friend, a small project you poured your heart into that maybe only 3 people saw. The stubborn, wobbly trying.
Those wobbly steps of the universe being built. You don't need a sprawling audience for a moment to contain the infinite.
And this leads to the final, lingering thought the story leaves us with. We know she didn't need to be small, so why did she choose this shape?
The text tells us she chose it happily, for no reason other than her own delight. She just wanted to see whether the universe was paying close enough attention to notice her.
And the really poignant part.
The final line reveals that the universe usually wasn't paying attention, but she kept toddling forward anyway. She didn't need the external validation.
The effort, the delight, the humming completeness of her existence, it was entirely self-contained.
She was the seed that knew it was a forest, whether anyone else watered it or not.
So, long after this deep dive ends, I want you to mull over this question. What if the most powerful, complete, and unshakable parts of your own potential are currently disguised as your smallest, most wobbly efforts?
What if the things you are most embarrassed by because they aren't big enough are actually your absolute core?
And what if they don't need the universe to notice them at all in order to contain an entire unfallen sky? Next time you walk through a city and you find yourself craning your neck to look up at those massive, sprawling skyscrapers, feeling incredibly small and insignificant, remember that the scale problem is just an illusion.
The skyscraper is just insecure square footage, begging the world to measure it.
You might just be the pebble on the sidewalk, quietly holding up the sky. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.